What's up, Sen Squad? Welcome back to another Brawl Stars video, and tomorrow, Edgar is releasing in Brawl Stars, and with it, a lot of your games are going to be completely filled with other people playing Edgar because he is a free brawler, and everyone's going to have him, and everyone's going to be trying to push him up. So we're going to be looking at strategies with Edgar, and specifically if you're facing other people playing Edgar, how can you counter them and how can you gain that advantage even though you're playing the same brawler? I'll focus mainly on Showdown, but of course these strategies can also be applied in 3v3 modes because you have little 1v1s with other people in those 3v3 modes anyway. So basically what the strategy is going to be if you're playing Edgar is that you just need to gain some sort of slight advantage whenever you're in a 1v1. Because if there's no advantage, you're completely equal, you both have the same amount of power cubes, and you both start attacking at basically the same time, then whoever wins is basically going to be random. It's going to be whoever was able to tap their button and mash it the fastest, and that is not a consistent way to push trophies at all. But the thing is, you can still gain an advantage when fighting other Edgars even if you have the same amount of power cubes as them. You just need to have a better strategy than them. So I guess the most obvious advantage you can have is if you have your super and they don't have their super. So if that's the case, you see someone without their super, they have the same amount of power cubes as you, then if you just jump in on them with your super, if you have the star power, you'll get an extra 1000 damage, which is that advantage you need to win. Or even if you don't have the star power, it's going to be very difficult for them to predict when you're going to land and when you're going to be able to start taking damage. So that means that's going to give you the head start on the first attack. Because if you're just hitting that attack button right before you land, it's impossible for you to waste any of your attacks because the game will only let you start attacking when you've actually landed. So it's highly possible that your opponent's going to make a mistake and either attack before you hit the ground and waste one of their attacks, or start attacking a bit after you hit the ground, in which case you'll have started to attack first and you're going to have dealt that damage a bit faster than them, meaning that you're going to come out on top in that 1v1. And even if it just so happens that they start attacking at the perfect time and you are pretty equal, you can sort of see that when you land. You can be like, oh, this opponent is actually really good, and then with that boosted movement speed that you get from your super, you will be able to escape, because just a standard movement speed for Edgar is 2.73 tiles per second, but right when you land from your super, you get that 2.5 second movement speed boost, which makes you go 3.4 tiles per second. So that means after those 2.5 seconds are up, you will have traveled 1 2/3 tiles more than whoever you were landing on, because they didn't use their super and they didn't have that movement speed boost. So since Edgar's range is just above 2 tiles, that just means as long as you're about a half tile or so away from them when you land with your super, which is almost guaranteed, it's very, very hard to land directly on top of someone with your super. As long as you're that distance away, then you will be able to get out of their range by the time your movement speed boost is up, meaning even if the worst case scenario happens and you jump on them and it would have been a tie because they started attacking at the perfect time, you will be able to escape and still continue playing in that game. So if you have your super and they don't, that is a huge advantage, and you always want to capitalize on that opportunity and jump in on an opposing Edgar if you see it's possible. Now, if they also have their super, what you don't want to do is jump in this case. What you want to do is sort of bait them into jumping on top of you. You want to get close to them, maybe get on the opposite side of a wall as them, because it just seems like the perfect opportunity for them to use their super on top of you. But in fact, when they do this, all you have to do is then just use your super while they're in midair and use it directly on top of where you're standing. You don't have too much time to do this, but it should be enough. If you're staring at their super icon and you can see right when they're about to use it, you should have enough time to react and use that super directly on top of yourself. And what that is going to do is that when they land, you're going to be in the air already with your super, so they won't deal any damage if they have the star power, and then you're going to land back down on top of them. And it's just like the scenario I was talking about before. They sort of have to predict when you're going to land, but if you're just spamming the attack button, you're always going to get that first attack in. So as long as you're not the first one to use your super, you will be able to get an advantage in a 1v1 with another Edgar. Now, if they have more power cubes than you in this situation, then you just sort of have to react to their super and use your own super far away from them, so that way they can't attack you, because they will definitely win if they have more power cubes than you. In terms of other just general situations, obviously if they have fewer power cubes than you, or they just have a lower max health because maybe they haven't leveled up their Edgar to a high enough power level, if you ever see that sort of numbers advantage, then of course jumping on them with your super is always going to be very, very good for you. And I recommend generally staying away from jumping on people who have more power cubes than you, even if they are at pretty low health, just because damage scales exponentially when you get more power cubes. cubes, but your health only goes up by 400 every time you get a new power cube, which is just linear. So even if they are at a low amount of health and you think you can take them out pretty quickly, they're going to be doing so much damage that they're likely going to wipe you out first. So you got to let other people do the dirty work for you, and maybe if they're down to only a few thousand health and you know you can take them out with just 1 or 2 shots, then you can jump in on them. But otherwise, I recommend playing it safe, because playing it safe is always going to be more consistent in the long run. So that's basically how you're going to win these 1v1 interactions with another Edgar. But in terms of overall strategy for the game, there are basically 2 routes you can take. And I think at the start of the game, what you always want to do is just focus on getting as many power cubes as possible. Because obviously, if everyone's playing the same brawler, everyone has the same stats, if you have more power cubes, you're just going to be objectively better than everyone else, and you're going to have the highest chance of coming out on top in that showdown game. So your main goal should be to try to leave yourself with the most power cubes out of everyone in that lobby by the end of the game. Now, sometimes it just doesn't happen. You can have no boxes spawn near you, or you can just get sort of unlucky with the people you're playing against. They could be a lot higher power level than you, and they can have the gadget to charge up their super really quickly, and that's not a good situation, so you try to run away, and you just don't have enough power cubes. So in this situation, when you know that you're not going to be able to get the most power cubes because maybe you just had a rough start to the game, you don't want to then try to save it and get a bunch more power cubes. But what you want to basically do is sort of just hide, make sure you have your super charged up, which is pretty easy to do since Edgar charges it up automatically over 30 seconds, and then just try to stand near where other people are fighting, and then try to come in and clean up at the end, because that's going to be your only way to consistently build yourself up through the rest of that game, because it's going to be near impossible for you to take on people who have more power cubes than you, so you have to wait for other people to deal damage to them first, and then you can go in and finish it up. But the main reason you want to keep your super is that if you ever encounter someone who has more power cubes on you, they're obviously going to try to be aggressive and take you out, because they can, and it's super easy to win that when you're both playing the same brawler. So as long as you have your super, you will have an escape route, and you can get out of those bad situations and keep yourself alive for longer, and then they'll probably retarget to someone else after they see you running away. So if you have a good start to the game, just go as aggressive as possible and try to get as many power cubes as possible, so that way you can come out on top at the end. But if you don't have a good start, then try to play even more safe and don't continue to try to get power cubes, so that way you can just last as long as possible and get the highest possible placement that you can, and that's going to get you the most trophies overall. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe and join the Send Squad. Don't forget to turn on notifications and go to your settings and enable notifications there as well, otherwise you won't get them. But that's all for today, guys, so see you later.